Okay, we'll do inkjets, the print cartridges here, the nozzles down here that the ink gets sprayed out of, either by heat or the piezoelectric effect. Uh, don't know that that's significant. What is significant is they can get dirty. Printers usually have a cleaning process. In the material, I think it says, and they may have an alignment process. Mine has an alignment process. Every time I change a cartridge, it has to align itself, which is not such a bad thing, particularly color printers, so that they get the colors right, and you don't have, I think they call it off register for them. The ink cartridges in this one are here, and then we have the print head assembly that goes onto the device itself. A number of different pictures of different kinds of inkjet printers. They tightly spaced nozzles to spray dots of ink onto the paper. What I found out the hard way one time is that the really cheap paper inkjets will bleed all over it. So you really, and this is another one, we need to use the right paper on them. They print one line at a time. So they go across, print the line, go down, and go back to the next line. One line at a time. They may duplex. Mine says it has a manual duplex. So it prints the page, I take it out, turn it over, put it in, and it prints the back side of the page. They may have a duplex capability. And the Soho ones, if you use an inkjet for a small office, home office, probably going to have a duplex capability. Some require alignment of the print head after changing the cartridges. Mine does it, says, okay, we're going to print it, we're going to align it, put it in, and scan it after we do it, so it checks its alignment that way. Some perform calibration automatically. The cartridges come in black in several colors. And some of the inkjets, the cartridges, the colors are separate cartridges. Some of them, like mine, is a single color cartridge. So if you run out of one color, you got to change the cartridge. The advantage of the ones where they come in single cartridges is if you run out of red, all you have to do is replace the red cartridge, and the rest of them may still have ink in them. The colors: photo black, light cyan, and light magenta. High capacity cartridges may or may not, when you go buy them, you've got the regular cartridge, and then a high capacity cartridge may or may not actually save us some money. Some use refillable ink tanks. There are a number of places that will refill the cartridges for you. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You should only, if you do refill them, you should limit the number of times that you refill them, because the holes in the print head actually do erode, and they're going to get bigger, and it's not going to give you as sharp a print as they get older. This is one we have here. One, we have the dust cover, the LCD instruction panel. 3 is going to be the control panel, what we're going to do with it. 6 is the ink cartridges, and this has individual cartridges that we can change. And then let's see, what is it? We have a flash memory card down here, and 5 is going to be the paper output tray. 4 is the print head drive belt, which drives this whole cartridge assembly across to get the printers, the device, where we need them to be. So, capabilities: why do we like them? Inexpensive copier paper. Brighter paper is made specifically for them. We can use photo paper, print the photos and have them. We can print transparencies, labels, cardstock, envelopes. Whether they produce black or white or color output, you can buy a black and white only, or a color one with color cartridges that produce both color and black and white. If you run out of the black cartridge, it'll typically mix to keep going on the color cartridge to try to make black, and it'll make a dark gray usually on those things. They may have duplexing capabilities. Cartridge design cost of the cartridges, whether we have the single and particularly the color, whether we have the single or whether we have the multiple color cartridges so we can replace them one at a time. Whether the print head is part of the printer or is packaged together with the ink tanks and the print head. The cartridge that we saw earlier, the print head was part of the cartridge itself, and the part of the tank was attached to it. Paper path, resolution, all these things are different characteristics. How the ink is released could be the piezoelectric effect. It says vibration. What the piezo or piezoelectric effect is, says that when you heat something, the shape changes, and what happens is, or when you apply a voltage to it, the shape changes when you heat it. When you apply voltage, the shape changes. So we apply a voltage to the end part, basically where the ink is, and it changes the shape of the ink path and squeezes the ink out through the head. Thermal method, and that's what most printers actually use today. Releases the droplet inks by heating it ink. It basically boils the ink out of the ink well. The volume of the ink drop is expressed in picoliters, 10 to 12 liters. A small drop in less grainy. Picoliters, and I don't know where I got the 10 to 12 liters, but pico is going to be a very small amount. Thermal inkjet printers use the heat to release the ink, and the piezoelectric use the piezo or piezoelectric effect. Piezo crystals, it flexes when the current flows through them, flexes, changes shape, and it forces the ink out through the nozzle. The inkjet print process, paper or media is pulled into position by the rollers, mechanisms, and those things should be cleaned occasionally. Print head moves across the paper and deposits the ink on it, black and white or the color ink at the end of the line. The paper or media is advanced, and the print head reverses direction and continues to print, often referred to as a high speed mode, or it returns to the left margin before printing continues. So depending on how fast the device is, it may or may not come back to the left. After the page is completed, the media is ejected. We know that. This is the inkjet print process, not as complex, obviously, as the laser process. So we have the print head, the reservoir here, the rollers, paper goes in, the letters get sprayed onto the paper and it comes out. And if you've ever picked it up too early, pictures particularly, you need to let the ink dry. A kind of a breakout here, we have the paper feed, ribbon cable. This is not, well, over here, depending on what we do, the ribbon cable here connects to the print head to send the information to it. So we're going to have it, and you can see it. It's a ribbon cable, so it's flexible so that the head can go back and forth. The ink cartridges, some control circuitry up here. The print head stepper motor. Stepper motor is the thing that moves it over one letter at a time, steps it across steps the carriage across the paper itself. The print head assembly moves back and forth. We have the paper feed step motor. Step motors step one step at a time. That's why they call them step motors, obviously. Paper advances the paper advance rollers and then the paper exit. Over here, the heating element. These are the heated tube containing the ink. The nozzle inside the print head, it heats up, forms a bubble, basically boils the ink and forces it out the nozzles in the print head. What can we do with it? I mean, basically the same thing we could do with the lasers. Laser rated paper and labels are okay for normal printing. Matte glossy paper for presentations and photos. It says this one, discard old photo paper due to a longer dry time than the current products. Set the print quality to use the correct paper type. Print head and cartridges can become clogged. They have frequently a self-cleaning feature, which just forces a lot of ink through the print head. Warm, shallow water soak of the nozzle tips can help clear them if they become if you get ink dried on them. They're supposed to go to a parking area, which prevents that, but if they stay inactive for a long period of time, the ink can dry in the nozzles themselves and you can clear it. Printer power button to shut down the printer. Do not use the power switch or unplug it. Preventive. The print heads can be misaligned. Use the refills, remanufacture cartridges, wait till the printer warranty period expires, because the manufacturers are going to ask if you do that, and then they're going to say you violated the warranty in those cases. Thermal printers produce photo quality output. Special papers required. The three types of thermal printers: a thermal dye transfer, also called dye sublimation printer, a type of color printer that uses heat to diffuse dye from color ribbons onto a special paper or transparency stock. Thermal wax transfer. Thermal wax printers have thermal print heads that melt wax-based solid color printers is a name that's frequently used with these things. Can be used for office settings. The issue with them, you have to turn them on. They have to warm up and actually melt the wax before you can use them. And then direct thermal printer, the things that we usually talk about, use the heated pins to form the image directly onto the thermal paper, the special coated paper. That is, again, light sensitive, and if you have kept a thermal receipt for whatever reason over the years, find that they do fade. That's one of the issues with them. They're quiet, they're quick, they work in a lot of places. As example, they work in gas pumps. They put them in gas pumps. That's where they go. You have to have the correct paper, the correct size paper when you do these things. On them, the print head has a matrix of dots. Can be heated in various combinations to create text and graphics. Print head transfers the text directly onto the heat-sensitive paper, as we have said a couple of times here. Get rid of some of this stuff, slowing me down. If multicolor paper is used, the thermal transfer dye sublimation, each ribbon is moved past the print head to get the colors on it, and once all the colors have been printed, the paper is then ejected or rolled out of the system. And this, and again, another image on that. We have the thermal paper direction, the thermal paper, the thermal print head, the heated pins. Image goes on it. Pressure roller brings it through. It comes out, and frequently these things, the thermal paper is in rolls, comes out. You tear it off, or it cuts the receipt for you. Heat sensitive paper, light sensitive, and it does fade. Standard or glossy. Thermal transfer ribbon types, we have wax, which goes to the paper, wax and resin or synthetics, and then resin for glossy, hard surfaces on these things. And dye sublimation printers, consumer kits include ribbon and the paper. The dye sublimation for color heat or color thermal type. The maintenance that we can do on them: replace the paper, clean the elements, remove debris from them. The last type of printer that we'll talk about is the impact printer. And printer strikes the paper. It said, and at the top there, an impact printer is any type of printer that strikes a component directly against an ink ribbon to create characters on the page. Can be dot matrix, which is what these are, or could have a electric ball that goes around. And the dot matrix are going to be, the print heads are going to have a different number of pins, and these are actually are little pins that strike the an inked ribbon that goes around, and it's a continuous feed ribbon that goes around and around, and you can use it until they obviously until they wear out. Some of the old IBM selectors were one use. The ribbon went through, and when it got done, you couldn't bring it back around in order to reuse it. These are a ribbon that's kind of a cotton-like substance that has ink on it. The ink ribbon here, the print head, which has the pins in it, a representation up here of how the dot matrix works. We can have 7, 9, 18, and 24 pin. More pins, the higher the resolution of the print that comes out of the device, obviously, so that if we need a letter quality, we're going to need one with a higher pin count for the heads themselves. The paper, and I didn't get a picture of it. The paper is a tractor feed. It's continuous feed paper. It has little holes along the side, strips that can be torn off when you need it. Can be used to make carbon copies of documents, carbon copies of forms, or what any of the other things that we might need. Yeah, let me finish up the attendance here. I'll get rid of that. So sheet roll, multi-part carbonless forms, and you may or may not have ever seen any of those things. The maintenance is to replace the ribbon. Print heads can be replaced. They wear out. They also get hot. If you're going to replace one from a machine that's been running, you want to wait till it cools down. And they get hot enough to burn you pretty good. Replace the paper in these things. This one over here is not. This is a ribbon that's a continuous feed, and I don't think I put the picture in. It's just kind of it serpentines around inside here and goes around and around and around. This ribbon here is a kind of a plastic ribbon that's a one use as it goes around. Once it goes around the first time, it's done. You can't reuse it. The one here, the continuous feed ribbon, just goes and goes and goes until you actually use all of the ink that's on the ribbon itself. Then we have virtual printers. I didn't know that they were called virtual printers for a long time. I thought I was just printing to a document, and that's what we're really doing. We don't have a printer. We don't have a print device with this thing. Print to a file. The PRN file contains the sequence control. The PRN file is actually usually going to be a parallel printer port on the device itself. In the DOS world, that's what we use to check to be sure that the connectivity of the printer was good. We would just send characters from the command prompt to the PRN, and then we would have find out if it were connected or not. Print to PDF, print to XPF, XPS, and then print to image. All of those capabilities are in Windows itself. Send documents to PCs, to fax servers, create documents that should not be changed when we do these things, make content available outside of the creating application. We can combining multiple documents. We can combine multiple documents into a single one, and then test the appearance of the printed document. The examples down there: Adobe Nitro PDF Creator, Microsoft XPS, Qt PDF Ghostwriter, and Send to OneNote. all of those things. Virtual printers print to document. The virtual process, if it's necessary, you can install the printer and use the application's print function, file print, and then whatever we're going to use it for. Let's see if this one will do it for me. Yeah, not cleanly. This one has several. If I were going to print this presentation file print, and then I have going to the drop down, I have a number of options. I can print to fax, Microsoft PDF, Microsoft XPS PDF 995, or send to OneNote. So I could do all those, as well as print to my physical print devices to the piece of paper that I might want. No, I've lost it. I guess because I keep grabbing the wrong area. Anyhow, virtual printers, you can add them if you want. Printer supplies, what we got, toner, cartridges, paper, other media are basically what we're going to use in these things. The ink cartridges here, obviously the different color ones. This is one of the kind of an all-in-one. It's got the toner, and it's also got the other components that are required for the laser printer. The drum is going to be under this thing here. It keeps it covered. It's a spring-loaded cover so that it doesn't get exposed to light. Local and network-based. Local are connected to the PC. The PC holds the print queue. Network-based are connected to the network, or a print server, and the print servers hold the print queue, and the print queue are the jobs that are waiting to be printed. Network connected printers are connected to the network, and the print server may reside on the printer itself, or the print server, and the print server holds the queue. The print server may be on the print device itself, or it may actually be on the local computer that we put it on. I got a series of what we're going to do here using Windows to install and share. Printers can be connected to a single computer, network, local, network printer. We talked about. I want to go through these steps, and then I want to try to show you how you can configure some of these things. We've looked at this USB, serial, and Ethernet, how we connect it to the device, to the network itself. It can be wired or wireless, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, ad hoc, or Wi-Fi infrastructure, ad hoc, computer-to-computer communication infrastructure goes through a wireless access point. Let's see, here we have install local or network OS compatible drivers, 32-bit drivers for a 32-bit system, and a 64-bit drivers for 64-bit systems. Windows 8 and 7 mini drivers built into, or drivers downloaded from the manufacturer's website. Microsoft has a lot of drivers, and 10 and 7 actually, and 8 could find a lot of the drivers for you. For some types of printers, it launches the installation program from the CD if you have it, or you download it from the manufacturer and use it in the setup. And the instructions there, do you put the driver in first, connect the device? You have to follow the instructions. I know my HP, when I installed it, it was a don't do it yet. Put the driver in, and as the driver goes in, we got farther down the line. It said, okay, turn the printer on now. So follow the manufacturer's instructions. 3 ways: the computer as a print server. And remember, the print server is just simply a process that says you're next, which print job is next to go to the print device. A hardware print server, USB, and they may be the hardware print server. The print server may be incorporated into the print device. Some are and some aren't. The print firmware for the print server allows the advanced printers to act as the server. Share a printer, security settings, wake on LAN to configure the wake on LAN to cause activity to wake up the sleeping computer to use it. And we said early on that if we share it from a computer, that computer has to be available when somebody else wants to use the printer. Secure the printer, the security tab, secure the data, and this is documents sent to the printer are cached, may be cached, and we can change it in the advanced tab here. It says the printer's properties box and select print directly to the printer. That is kind of a good and kind of a bad thing. The default is to print out of the queue, so that out of the cache basically, so that it can optimize the printing process for it. And this is to share the printer, use the devices that are use a file explorer to do that. Device sharing, wired, generally USB or Ethernet, wireless, Bluetooth, print server to manage the print queue, device and printers option on Windows in order to do these things. And some things that we've talked about, I think, well, we haven't all of them, but configuration options, duplex, print on both sides, collate, instead of having the printer print page 1, page 1, page 1, page 1, page 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, on down the line. Print 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if you're lucky and have a stapler, print 1, 2, 3, 4, staple that set, staple the next set on down the line. Orientation, whether it's portrait or landscape, and then the print quality, you specify draft, normal, or high quality print for them. What I want to do right now is bring over, and I have, this is in the control panel devices and printers. I'm running a Windows 10 machine. If I add a printer, and this is a way that you can put one in without actually owning it, and I'd say no, my printer wasn't listed. It gives me the option to manually install it. I'm going to come down here and say I want to add a local printer, and I'll just leave it on LPT1 since I don't have one on this, and then I can specify a printer. We'll do the HP LaserJet Enterprise, and there's a whole bunch of manufacturers, a whole bunch of printers that you can put in here. And do next, and I've already done this to be sure it still worked on Windows 10. I've used this in classes a lot. Install the print driver, whatever we're going to call it. It's going to install the printer. You can put in the comments location if you want to do it. And then we can finish. I'm not going to print a test page because it's not real. I now have this thing. So I can go in, and you can go in and look at the properties of the printer. General properties here tells me what it is. The hardware properties, go into properties here. Settings, this just takes me back to the folder. The details, the local print queue that's available, and events, the device started and that I installed it and it started. When we go over here to see what's printing, obviously is going to be what's in the queue. Printer properties are things that we can configure. We have the sharing ability here, share or don't share, and then what we want the name, the shared name to be shows up here. If I had additional drivers, if I needed that, if I had additional drivers, I would have to be in advance to manage an administrator in order to make those changes. The ports that are available, we could add a port. As you click down here, and we'll do printer pooling, and I put that on LPT1. If I did printer pooling, if I had two print devices that had the same driver, the same capabilities, I could have them on the two different ports, which is going to increase the speed to that queue. Problem with that, seeing this done, is people don't know which device it's coming out on. We had at one time two printers that were back to back, And I see people standing and staring at a printer when their print job was in the one that was on the other side. So that one may or may not work for you. But the ports advanced in here, this is when we talk about the spool, the printer spool, start printing immediately or start printing after the last page is spool. This is where it's going to cache. You're going to store these information. You're going to store this information. And here, if you want to keep documents, keep printed documents, it's going to keep the file. Issue here is you're going to start filling up disk space because this is going to be on the disk wherever by default it's in the Windows directory. Windows System 32 printers is where it's going to be. You can change that location if you want to do that. We have a print processor here, how that's going to be. We have Windows Print, how the device is going to process the printer. If you want separator pages, which is basically a piece of paper between print jobs that has the user's name on it. You can do that if it's necessary. It's going to use an extra sheet of paper for each one. Other capabilities that you can do, this one says it's always available. I can make it available at certain times of the day. Priorities can go from 1 to 99 on this thing, and priority 1 is the highest. Usually, priority 1 is the highest. A lot of times we think about the higher number being the higher priority, but in this case, 1's going to be the lowest. If we had a new driver, we have the drivers here that we could select. Not really a good idea. You can cause a whole bunch of issues with that. Color management on this one comes out with a different window here in order to do that. We have some advanced settings, and here we have calibrate display on this, change the system defaults, perceptual photo images, some configurations that can go into the color management of it. Security, I talked about who can use this thing. When we share it here, we can go in here in security, who can use it. By default in Windows, when you share a printer, everybody can print to it. In all application packages, me and I'm the one that's on this thing, and administrators in this one can manage the printer, can manage the documents on it. Everyone can by default print. If you don't want that to be the case, you can remove everyone and add the users that you want to be able to do it. Device settings, first available tray, and then the trays and what kind of paper you're going to have in each of the trays. Installable options, the accessory bit, duplex, not installed on this one. If we had the duplex capability, the duplex unit, the one that's going to flip the paper, we could configure it there. And the other last thing I guess here is printing preferences, and not a whole lot. Paper quality, automatically select first available tray. Media, what kind of media is in the tray. We could pick a tray 1, and say that it had cardstock, for instance. Are we going to print color, black and white? This is one of the things that they say that you got a color printer and it's not printing in color. Check the grayscale settings on the printer itself. Advanced here, these are the ones pen protected printing that I was talking about. If we turn it on, and then what the pin's going to be, you've got to put a pin in order to get the document out. So we'll turn that back off. I'm going to delete this thing here in just a second anyway. Okay, so we had those, the layout that we did, pages per sheet. If you want to put more pages than 16 is just absolutely ridiculous. But you're typically going to be 1, but if you want to put more than 1 page per sheet, you can do that. Let's see what's printing is going to show us the print queue. And then we can go into these documents, pause, printing, cancel all documents, and go back to the printing preferences that we had before. You can set it as the default printer. Use the printer offline, which will collect the job, but it's not connected to the printer itself. And then we can go back again, back to the properties. We can get to them through it also. The other thing that we've talked about is the print server. So once I click on a printer, I can go up here and use the print server properties. And on this one's on LPT1, drivers that are available, security, and then in the advanced here, if I say, yeah, I want to do this, I can go in here and change the location, the spool folder. This is where, when we're spooling, we would store the documents. And spooler is a service. Let me start the services here. Or try to start the services here. Spooler is a service that runs on the on the Windows system. I'm answering somebody. Okay, so we go over here and let me drag this over. A whole bunch of services running. If we go down here, it should be, I think it's going to be Print Spooler. Sometimes these things get messed up. And if we look at it, up here, this service spools print jobs and handles interaction with the printer. If you turn this service off, you won't be able to print or see your printer. So it's there. Sometimes they don't get started right. Sometimes they need to be stopped and started in order to part of the troubleshooting process of some of these printers. But if you want to practice configurations of some of the high-powered devices, all you got to do is go in and tell Windows to install one of those printers for you. Then when you get done, we'll just remove the device and it's gone. The print driver is still going to stay there. When you remove the device, the drivers don't get taken off. So if you ever installed it again, it would, that print driver would be there. Other devices, obviously, that have been or are connected to the computer. So configuring Windows printing on a Windows device. The sharing, the print server would be running on the computer, and one of those printers was shared. The print server runs on this computer. It's shared to the laptop, basically. If we're going to use one of our small devices, we have to have other we have to have an app in order to do that, to be able to connect to the network to do that. Cloud and remote printing, one of the topics here. This is one that I found that I thought had some significant printers here. It's from True Cloud Printing. They were selling a product, but I thought it was a cool slide. But Printware provides native file print, Windows printing, as well as reporting for any computer or Surface tablet, and the remote printing, securely connected printers on remote networks wherever they're located without the use of costly VPN services. Pull printing, print on secure release anywhere. This is the software that they're selling. Mobile printing, secure mobile printing on any device with print on iOS and Android printing. So we have to have something that allows us to get to the printers from our devices. The next section is, and this is not going back to lasers, but we're going to talk about maintenance on these things a little bit. Down here is we're talking about the light sensitive drum. That the little window that usually covers it up has been taken off of this one so that you can see what it looks like. And gloves, when you're working on these things, I would recommend that you use gloves. And you can see a lot of times people working on these things have big aprons on because they're going to be messy. Toner is going to be really messy, really fine, hard to clean up if you have a toner spill, but it's something that has to be done. And then the maintenance, replace the toner cartridge when it's needed. You're probably going to get a message that says the toner's low. If you get a toner low, it doesn't mean that you got to replace it right then. It means that the toner is getting low and that you should be prepared. You should check to be sure that you have a toner cartridge available that you can replace uh, the, with when it does run out. You'll get a notification. One of the ways to extend the life of the toner cartridges a little bit is after they say they're empty, take it out and shake it, and you may dislodge some toner that's compacted in it. Calibrate the printer when needed. Maintenance kits for these things are going to have the fuser, the transfer roller, the paper feed roller, the separation pad and rollers. These are mechanical devices. Fuser obviously is not mechanical. It's a heating device, but the rest of them are mechanical devices that can and do fail, that need to be replaced occasionally. They also need to be cleaned because they can get dirty. They don't recommend that you use air inside of a laser printer because of the toner. You just wind up blowing toner all over everything if you do that in many cases. Laser printers, this shows a vacuum here. That's something that's not recommended, a regular vacuum, because of the fine nature quality of the toner and the fact that something like this with the plastic and the airflow can create a static charge on it. Our dirty laser printers are dirty. All the toner, paper dust. Check the manufacturer's recommendations, water or an isopropyl alcohol to clean these things with. The exterior that usually recommend just a damp cloth. Outside, there it is, outside a damp cloth. Inside, wipe the dust away. Don't use a normal vacuum cleaner or compressed air. You just blow it all over the place. Wash the skin with a cold water and clean the rollers with isopropyl alcohol when you need to do those. Thermal printers, replace the paper, clean the heating elements, remove the debris that's inside it. Isopropyl alcohol to remove sticky residue. Paper, relatively inexpensive, but impossible to substitute. You have to have the right paper and the right size on for the device itself. Actual replacement normally going to be pretty easy. You take the top off and put the new roll in, much like in a calculator. These are, let's see what we got here. Gently swab, usually in small areas. Liquid cleaner for the isopropyl alcohol, a cleaning pen. The manufacturer's recommendation, what we're talking about here, are going to be the inkjet devices. So swab the areas, use a cleaning card, cleans the head and the paper trays. Relative small amount of paper bits and dust. There's no toner in this thing, so you can blow these printers out or wipe it out with a damp cloth. This shows a picture of something that's going to be coming from an air compressor. You really shouldn't use that air because it's going to have some oil in it, even if it's an oilless air compressor. Impact printers and some pictures here. Clean the ribbon. Replace the print heads. They do wear out after a time. They're hitting this stuff constantly when we do these things. Remove the dust from the tractor feed wheels. Adequate ventilation. And this shows, this is a ribbon. This is a red and black ribbon, obviously, that we could use. They do take a lot of abuse. They get hot when you're changing the print head. And usually there's a release that you can take the print head out and snap a new one in. Be careful if it has been in use because they do get pretty hot. We used to use a lot of dot matrix printers. They're not really popular. They're very, very noisy. If you've ever been around one, you know. If you haven't, just trust me, they're very, very noisy. Replace the ribbon. Replace with a ribbon for best effect. The output should look perfect. So as the image starts to dull a little bit, you may need that's when you get the idea that you need to replace the ribbon. And again, this is one. I cut it off here a little bit, but it just goes around and around and around. It's got a storage compartment here that kind of snakes around inside of it. Inkjet maintenance, and this shows one that is dirty, a print head that's dirty on this, what they look like. Use the printer frequently, replace the cartridges as needed. And when you use one, you know that when you need to replace the cartridge, you print and nothing comes out. Calibrate it if needed, usually going to be on the color ones. Print head cleaning routine, run the nozzle. The way a lot of people clean these things is with a Q-tip, a moist Q-tip to wipe the heads off. And this was one of the ones that you could put it in a shallow water soak too, to get the heads clean. Small droplets of ink, clogged heads can be an issue. Cleaning can be started manually. Some cartridges can be removed and manual cleaning may help. Some common tools, and we show dust here, but we also show a toner vacuum down here that you can use. Dust for everything else. Lasers, you really don't want to use it. An extension magnet for when you drop small parts, if you do like I do. The kits are going to have the fuser, the transfer roller, rollers for picking up paper, and separation pads and rollers. This is a summary slide. You can get it. It also comes from the Professor Messer study guide. That's one that really can be useful to you if you use it. But laser maintenance, toner cartridge replacement to replace the cartridge, keep it in the bag to protect the light sensitive drum that goes around, and it's going to have a door. You don't want to expose it to light because it can do damage to it. Power down the printer before replacement. Probably want to unplug it because we talked about the high voltages that are in it. The maintenance kit, periodic maintenance, replace the feed rollers, transfer rollers, pickup rollers, fuser unit, power down during maintenance. And once you replace these things, reset the page counters. I'm not going to go through the other ones. The test itself, and most of the printers that you're going to be dealing with are going to be, I think at least, are going to be laser printers. Software tools that may be available, test patterns. We talked about the print spooler, the power cycling, turn it off for 30 seconds and then back on. You clear the memory and start a fresh session. One of the, and it won't fix all the problems, but one of the best ways to fix printer problems is to turn it off. Let the memory drain down the 10 to 30 seconds, maybe a couple of minutes, and then turn it back on. A number of them have self-diagnostics. There's some Windows troubleshooter and some generic tools. The process that I have always been taught to troubleshoot a printer is first to see if it's connecting. And that was always done at the command line when we had the parallel port where we printed the PRN. If you could send some just text information across, then we had connectivity. Then we would try to just print a test page out of Windows. That tested the printer, the print driver. Then you try to print from a document, and that tests the ability of Windows to do the processing to get the document in. A number of ways to do those things. Where can we get the tools, and where we can do the device documentation, a manufacturer's website? Google can probably find you any of the documents that you're going to need for any of these devices. Logs and reports, previous service records, documentation. One of the things that I'll admit I'm very poor at that a number of networkers are very poor at is documentation. So do those things, document, so that for one thing, you know what you've done in the past. For another thing, whoever comes in behind you, because you're not going to stay in these jobs forever, knows what's been done to the device. And then common printer symptoms. What, instead of going through those, I want to show you, if I can get there, in the share, wrong share. A plus, and in the study guides here, a couple of, no, I didn't put them in there, did I? In the question bank, I hope, printer summary and printer problems that are here. Print results light, toner is low, replace the toner cartridge. Ghosting, the trum is not fully discharged. Erase lamp is not functioning, and there is an erase lamp that takes the charge off of those things as it goes around. Print a couple of black pages, replace the cartridge, call a trained service technician to replace the erase lamp. That's something that's not part of the kits that we use. Memory overflow, the image size is too large or the memory size is too small. Totally black pages, damaged primary corona, that's not getting the negative charge, so when it goes around, the toner's being attracted to the entire drum. Pages are dirty with toner, dirty diffuser, leaky cartridge, paper transport component is dirty. Multiple pages at the same time, the wrong paper type, defective transport, a number of things that can be available there. This is a series of things, and the question bank that I talked about earlier is here if you want to check it. I know that you're going to